Okay. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our second Lunch and Learn. I believe most people are here. I'm seeing a lot of familiar names and wish I could see your faces as well, but just even good to see that you're here. Really appreciate it. I'll do a quick round of introductions of some of the faces you're going to see and the people you're going to hear from. Myself, I'm going to say to one of the speakers, possibly Pete, we're getting a lot of feedback from you right now. If the other speakers could just mute themselves in just for a second, please, that would be helpful. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, my name's Dave Cranenberg. I am the farmer behind Kendall Hills Farm and the founder of Graze Gather Food. And as a lot of you know, we've been on quite a journey over the last 2 years. Quite the journey over the last 2 years as we've tried to navigate how to build out a more resilient local food system. And yeah, I'm really happy because the four farmers that are joining me today are actually folks that I did not have the pleasure of knowing pre-pandemic. These are all relationships that I've been lucky enough to form over the last 2 years. And I know that I'm very grateful to eat their food. And I'll do a quick, in order, I'll try to facilitate just a quick unmuting to introduce yourself. And I'm also going to pose a quick question just to get some kind of base definitions out of the way as we go. And so the first person I see on my screen is Larissa from Littleleaf. And so Larissa, as you introduce yourself and your farm, could you also tell us very quickly, what is the difference between a microgreen and a sprout?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. So I'm from Littleleaf Farms. We grow microgreens indoors year round. And the difference between microgreens and sprouts is, so microgreens are grown to the cotyledon leaves. Sometimes we can grow them out to the true leaf, but where sprouts, they're harvested as a sprout, so they don't actually grow into a leaf. And a sprout always is harvested with the root intact, where the microgreens, we don't keep the root intact. So that's the quick difference between microgreens and sprouts.
Amazing. Thank you, Larissa, and looking forward to hearing more about all of that. Next up, Pete, if you could introduce yourself and tell us a quick definition of aquaponics.
Good afternoon. Quick introduction into aquaponics is it's a symbiotic closed loop system that actually incorporates aquaculture and hydroponics, and we don't use any fertilizers, no chemical pesticide fertilizers, and we use like 95% less water than any dirt farm on the planet. So, does that suffice?
I think so. I think it's a good introduction, and I'm sure like we're going to get into it some more as well. And what's the name of your farm, Pete?
Oh, sorry, it's called Pure Homegrown.
Okay, perfect. Okay, and next up then I see Michael from ClearWater. So Michael, if you wouldn't mind, given the quick definition of the farm, but as well as the nonprofit behind it, because I think that you have a very interesting farm business operating there.
Perfect. Thank you, Dave. So yeah, my name's Michael. I'm with ClearWater Farm, and we've been this is our 6th season. We are a nonprofit, so we've got an education program, which is the charitable side of the organization, and then we also have a for-profit farm, which I'll delve into more today. That's really my focus, but I will spend a bit of time talking about the larger organization and just our education mandate and sort of why we're here and why we're growing food for you. So thank you, Dave.
Awesome. Thank you, Michael. And Next up is Derrik from Mighty Harvest. And if you, after you introduce yourself, if you could also just quick definition of hydroponics.
For sure. Thanks, Dave. So my name is Derrik from Mighty Harvest Produce, a vertical hydroponic farm in Oshawa. Hydroponics is not too far off from aquaponics. The major difference is instead of using fish as a fertilizer, we use derived nutrients that we feed into our water system. And it's a soil-less growing method that is closed loop. And so similar, we're using less water than conventional agriculture.
Amazing. Thank you, Derrik. Okay, now to everybody on this call today, just a few things so that you know. There's a Q, like you can type in your questions as you go along, and we will do our best to answer them as people are speaking. I believe you can't see other people's questions until we've actually answered and reply, and then you can actually see all of them. Ask away at any time. You know, it'll help us as we get to different kind of question points with everybody. You can also raise your hand, you can share emojis, anything like that along the way as well, by all means. And okay, so Sydney, if you could advance to, sorry, the other person on the call is somebody that I think everybody knows well by name. It's Sydney, who is our community coordinator for Graze Gather. She's the one who makes sure that we are making everybody happy through the food that we're delivering. And she's the one that's also kind of coordinating the Lunch and Learn series. Okay, so we've already done the introductions, and I'm going to pass it over to Michael now from ClearWater just to talk more about how they do what they do, and especially how they grow green, like their strategies towards growing greens as year-round as possible. So Michael, over to you. Oh, you're muted right now.
You didn't miss much there, but yeah,
okay.
from that first photo there, that is our greenhouses. We're striving for year-round production here at ClearWater, and this is just our, as I said, the organization and the farm have been operating for 6 years, but this is our 3rd year growing through the winter. So we're located in the York region. We're over on the shores of Lake Simcoe. And so our mission is very much water-wise agriculture. We are an educational charity, as I mentioned earlier, and our mandate is to engage young people in a water-wise connection with the land through art, science, and technology. Prior to the pandemic, that started with after school programming, a summer camp, a whole range of different activities that we had on site. And we are hoping to continue with that mandate. COVID has let us focus in more on the food production and the farm business side of the operation. And so that's what I'll spend more time talking about today. If we could advance to the next slide, I don't know, am I responsible for that, Dave? Or perfect. So yeah, one of the big ones is our winter green production. Right now, we've got a variety of different greens in the greenhouses, anything from lettuce mix, spinach, arugula, tot soy, bok choy, cilantro, kale, chard, and we grow in soil. Our focus is on regenerative agriculture, and so whether we're growing in the greenhouse or field crop during the spring, summer, and fall seasons, our focus is on building healthy soil, low-till systems, and creating a diverse enough crop plan. So our pest control methods are very much starting with things like grow cover and then escalating to beneficial insects and eventually even some of the more organic approved sprays, things like that. But for the most part, we're pulling crops out if we've got a pest problem, and we're doing enough interplanting, crop rotation, and diverse sort of planting patterns with trap crops, things like that, to be able to just sort of weather the storm. The winter growing does get a little bit more intensive, just monitoring moisture levels in the greenhouse. If you do get an infestation, it is quite hard to deal with. And so sometimes we're pulling out crops and we're planting different things, and we're still trialing that. Every winter is a little bit different. This winter we have had a certain number of challenges, most of them having to do more with just the decreased light and the cold temperatures. So for us, winter growing starts in September and October when we pull our heat-loving crops out of the greenhouses, things like tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers. Those come out, and we plant our greenhouses up with our first sort of succession of winter greens. Ideally, they get up to size by November and December, because once you get to that point in the season, without grow lights, you're really not seeing any plant growth at that point. But they get to a certain size, and we're able to harvest off them usually through January. And then we're doing our succession plantings right now. We start those inside with grow lights. We move them out to the greenhouses onto sort of a heated table system. We create a bit of a microclimate with heating pads, sand, and then a nice plastic cover just to create a very small microclimate for our seedlings. And then we're transplanting and we're direct seeding into the soil. One of the nice things with that is we're able to keep the greenhouses pretty cold. Ideally, we strive for just above freezing overnight, so sort of 2 to 5 degrees. And then on a sunny day, that'll get up to 25 or 30 pretty quickly on in the day. So we're able to really see growth now in February, whereas December and January, they're more just months where it's like your crops are up to a certain size, we're able to harvest, but we're not really seeing that new growth. So hopefully we're through the worst of the winter now, and we're starting to see that on the other side. Just over the next slide. Yep. So yeah, one of the great things about growing year round is we are able to offer our farmers year-round employment. That's something that we feel very strongly about. We've got a young farmer training program, and so being able to say, hey, this is a viable career. We're not just offering seasonal employment. We're not going to lay you off for a few months in the winter, but you're going to be able to experience greenhouse growing. You're going to be able to do all of the necessary planning, all of sort of that catch-up work that you need to do to have a successful season once we get outside. And so a lot of what our farmers are doing right now is maintenance to the crops in the greenhouses, and then planning for, we do a weekly food basket program, we do some wholesale distribution, and then we also work with a number of community partners. And so yeah, it's a good chance for our farmers to continue to keep their hands in the soil, but also to do some of the other projects that they don't necessarily have time to do once the season gets really busy. Growing vegetables year round in Ontario is, yeah, I think part of a bigger question. How can we increase our production, whether it's greens, root vegetables, fruit? The growing season here is so short. So we are trying to do a small part in terms of figuring out different strategies and methods for growing intensive greens in the winter, and then also being able to have a nice storage of root crops and vegetables throughout the year. We're hoping that that leads to a decreased carbon footprint. I had a customer ask the other day, what is the difference between me buying a clamshell of your salad greens from my local grocery store versus getting them in from California? And that is a question that I'm still struggling to answer fully. I think this panel can probably also lead some insight into that, but just in terms of the economy of scale and the different labor cost of producing food in California or Mexico right now, as opposed to heating these greenhouses, and paying a living wage here in Ontario. And so I think we are closing that gap, and I think just trying to understand that a little bit more is something that I'm very committed to for this season. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, our mandate is education, and one of our big focuses right now is something that we call the Agripreneur Program. So it's a multi-year program where we hire farmers, typically with some background, whether they've gone to university or college for agriculture and haven't necessarily gotten a chance to start growing yet, or potentially it's just an interest that they've come to later in life, and they don't want to make that jump right into taking on land of their own or all of that investment that comes with deciding to start a farm. And so at the moment we're looking to hire some new positions for 2022, and I thought I would just include that as a slide. It's a great opportunity to come and learn how to farm, and also be able to take on some land and start your own business as a bit of an incubator hub at Clearwater here. So that's it for me for today. The last slide is just a bit of a thank you to the other farmers and food producers on this panel, and then all of you who have joined us for this lunch. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, Michael, for the overview of the season extending that a soil farmer will use. And thanks for raising that question of the difference as well. I think we are going to get into that a bit. But next up, we're going to hear from Larissa from Littleleaf. So Larissa, if you'd like to unmute yourself and talk all things microgreens.
Okay, thank you very much, Dave. So as we were saying earlier, what are microgreens? So microgreens are tiny vegetables packed up with 30 to 40 times more nutrients than the full-grown counterpart. So meaning you could eat like a half a cup of broccoli microgreens and receive more nutritional value than eating, a full head of the broccoli. So a lot of people like that because not everybody enjoys eating full heads of broccoli, and you can get the same or more nutritional value by eating just a half a cup of broccoli microgreens. And they're very easy to put into smoothies, into so many different dishes that we'll get into more later on. Microgreens are usually harvested just after the cotyledon leaves. So those are the seed leaves. Sometimes we do leave the microgreens to grow to the first true leaves emerge, depending on what we're looking for. For instance, sometimes we'll let our mustard grow a little bit more so we can get a little bit of the frill that comes out from the true leaf. And just to go over what a cotyledon leaves are, they're part of the seed embryo, and they're able to provide enough food for the seedlings to grow into the true leaves. So you don't need to add fertilizer or anything like that when you're growing microgreens, because all the nutrients that they need are right there. And in addition to the powerful source of nutrition microgreens offer, they also provide an amazing taste, crunch, and aesthetic appeal to your dishes. Next slide, please. Sorry, it looks like my slides didn't update from my I have some old slides here. Sorry, because I redid some of them, I guess. Is there any? It's okay. I'll just this is fine. Okay, sorry about that, everyone. But so again, we're just going to go over the difference between microgreens and sprouts more in detail. So as we already have said, microgreens and sprouts are not the same. A lot of people will call microgreens sprouts, but they're not sprouts. Microgreens can offer more nutritional value than sprouts, just depending on what microgreen. Microgreens can be grown in soil hydroponically and require light, where sprouts are only grown in water and they require no light. Sprouts can have a quicker turnaround because you can grow them within 3 to 5 days, where microgreens, depending on the crop, can take anywhere from 8 to 21 days. And also depending on the size you're looking for, like really we can turn around radish microgreens in 7 days, but we like to grow them out 8 days just because they do just grow a little bit bigger, and we make sure that all the seed hulls are off the radish at that time. So microgreens offer a lot more flavor and aesthetic appeal than sprouts because there's a lot more color and a lot more, like, the flavor is some of them are very intense. And microgreens are harvested above the substrate, and they do not incorporate any of the root system, as we have previously said. And sprouts are always usually harvested before any leaves emerge and include the embryonic root. Next slide, please. Yeah, I'm so sorry because I've added like pictures and stuff. So I'm so sorry, everyone, that my I don't know why I didn't update, but how we grow indoors all year round. We grow inside a 12,000 square foot Quonset, but really we're only utilizing about 700 square feet right now. We hope to expand that this year. And we do grow vertically. We're in a climate controlled steel building. We grow in 10 by 20 flats, like microgreen trays. We stack them during the germination stage. Each day the trays are unstacked and they're misted from the top. Then when the plants are approximately 1 inch tall, the trays are unstacked and moved onto grow racks where they will stay until we harvest them. And once they're on the grow racks, the microgreens are watered from the bottom. And we're ready to harvest our microgreens anywhere from 9 to 15 days, depending on the crop. And we use organic soil, organic seed on non-GMO. Our temperature that we're aiming for is about 72 degrees. That's the ideal temperature to grow microgreens. And our humidity, we want to keep it around about 55%. So our top 5 nutritional microgreens are, I just gotta look right here, sorry guys. So broccoli, it's very high in cellophane, chlorophyll, amino acids, antioxidants, vitamins A, B, C, E, K, and they're one of the most nutritional microgreens. So if there's any microgreen that you want to incorporate into your diet today, hands down, it's broccoli. We also, so for our pea shoots, they're very high in protein, also antioxidants, vitamin C, A, and K. Sunflower, they're high in protein, zinc, vitamin A, B, D, E, and minerals. Radishes are an excellent source of calcium, magnesium, vitamin B6, A, C, and kale is a good source of calcium, vitamin A, B, C, E, K, and potassium. And I just want to really point out really quickly, a great way to use pea shoots is in a stir fry. At the very end, you can just throw pea shoots in at the very end when you're cooking your stir fry, and it will add such a great crunch to your dish. Okay, and can we go to the next slide, please? All right. I just really wanted to include, because everyone's always asking, like, how do I eat microgreens? And microgreens are super easy to eat. Like, a great way is just to throw them into your smoothies, just snack on them raw. You want to put them in wraps, sandwiches, soup, stews, stir fries, in your salads, on pizza, egg dishes. You want to put them on steaks, sausages, burgers. Like radish microgreens on burgers in the summertime are so good. And really, you just want to put microgreens on everything and anything. Like just eat them, just snack on them, just enjoy them. And I think that's the last slide.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Larissa. And yes, a good tasty note to end on, because I will say that I enjoy greens from all of these farms every morning as part of my breakfast with my eggs and mushrooms and stuff. So thank you to all of you, because they are delicious. Next up, Derek. So Derek, I'm gonna start with a question first, because we're gonna see right away on your first slide pink lighting, and I'm hoping as you talk you can also tell me what's up with the pink lighting, because I'd love to know more about it. But
for sure, it's very different when you're actually in the farm. I mean, it's kind of pink, but it's really more red. So what's happening there is there's 3 red lights and 1 white in each section. So the white kind of dilutes with the red when you're looking at it from far away, which makes it pink. The red light it's the optimal spectrum of light for plant growth. you do need a full spectrum of light. So you need your green and you need your blue, and that's where the white light comes in, is it's projecting those spectrums as well. Blue is very good for things like flower production and kind of overall root growth. But because a lot of our crops are turn around quite quick because they're like leafy greens, we don't really need to focus on the root growth. We're just focusing on getting the plant as large as possible, as soon as possible, so that we can turn that crop around. So just overall in Mighty Harvest, we started in 2021. We're located in Oshawa, Ontario. We operate, it's a bit different than most vertical farms in the sense that we have this tower system, as you can see behind me. I think you can actually flip to the next slide, and there's another picture, similar pictures. You can see a little bit more there. So the crops are planted into those towers. Those towers come down out of the racks and we lay them on tables, and that's how we harvest. And as well as clean out the towers and transplant stuff into the towers as well. We're operating again on a closed loop system, so the water recirculates. We have a big tank in the back corner of the facility behind all those towers there, where the water is getting filtered. The nutrients are getting into the water, and then it's pumping it out of that tank, and then drips down from the top of the towers through the tower and then into the gutter down below, and does that loop again. Obviously the plants take up water as well, so we do have a constant feed into our tank of reverse osmosis water that keeps the tank at the level that we need it at. Yeah, you can go to the next slide from there. So my biggest focus at Mighty Harvest is getting the freshest product possible to the customer. When we're purchasing product at big brand stores, it is coming from California or Arizona most likely, and that product is at least 10 days old from the harvest date when we're purchasing it. When you're factoring in, these production facilities are not right at the farms in California or Arizona, so it's, you know, they're harvesting, they're bringing it to the production facility to package it, they're putting on a truck. It's going to make a few stops at some hubs along the way through the States. It'll end up at a distribution center for one of the main brand grocery stores in the Toronto area. And then it gets shipped out to the grocery store and then put out on the shelf, hopefully with the same day, but very often a few days later, once their old inventory clears out. So our goal is to reduce that as much as possible. And we're able to do that as soon as the same day. We often are able to actually sell the product on the same day of harvest. So we'll harvest first thing in the morning, put it right in the fridge for it to cool down a little bit, package it around midday. And for instance, on a Wednesday, our store opens at or 3 o'clock, or we can get it out to Graze Gather as soon as possible. What that allows for is the customer now has that product in their fridge for what we've been told and what I can, you know, I use the product as well myself. So it's usually around 3 weeks, depending on the crop, that the customer can keep that in their fridge from the date of harvest. And that's the biggest sales factor is customers love that, you know, they're not purchasing that product, opening it up from the grocery store and have slimy leaves inside, because that is all too common, unfortunately. We can go to the next slide from there. After getting the freshest product to the customer as possible, we also need to focus on flavor and what kind of leaves we're putting into our mixes. The advantage of being a small local farm is that we're able to deal directly with our customers, and notably also we do sell to some restaurants, so we can work with chefs as well who have a very good, you know, taste for flavor and textures and know what works together, and they can also help us make better blends for not only themselves but our customers that we sell you know, to households as well. So we want to put as much in our blends as possible, to have a diverse set of leaves, keep the mix interesting, keep lots of flavors in it as well. So right now, what we're growing in terms of leafy greens, as you can see on the left-hand side there, so we grow kale, and that's a few different types of kale, and we only grow it to a baby kale stage right now. We have tested it out, and we've sold some full stature green curly kale or dinosaur kale, but right now we're just doing baby kale, and we have some different colors to just keep the mix interesting. We're growing lettuce, mizuna, arugula, mustard, and pak choi. And all the arrows there show you what that goes into in the 5 products that we sell right now. So they're all, I would say, very popular. Some weeks, the mixed greens, which is just like a normal kind of spring mix in terms of what you get from the grocery store, and usually the most popular, but sometimes we're surprised. The lettuce blend sells really well. People really just like to try different things from us and mix it up. Our picante blend is something that's probably the most different. We do have, it's mostly mustard greens, and then we also put the pak choi, which is, it's a brassica that just has a kind of earthy taste to it, and that kind of tones down the mustard greens a little bit. That's kind of it's a cool example of, we don't really grow too many crops, but of those crops that we had on the left-hand side there, we're able to make a lot of different blends from that. So what do I see for vertical farming? So right now we do grow predominantly leafy greens, but we love to test out some other things. So all those 3 pictures on the left-hand side there, we have the tiny tomatoes, strawberry, and those are paprika peppers on the bottom. Those are all things that we've grown in the farm. They're not necessarily scalable at this time in terms of being able to sell them and a decent profit from them. But the way that vertical farms are going and the way that technology is improving, it really comes down to the lighting, most importantly. Once the lighting gets more efficient and we can spend less on electricity per square foot or have a higher output per square foot, that's when these crops are going to be more seen from vertical farms locally and internationally. There are some farms that are totally dedicated to strawberries. So it is even viable now. It's just the leafy greens are kind of where you start in vertical farming. It's your entry point to the market, and then from there, it is definitely more complex growing those crops, and you wouldn't necessarily want to do it in the same space because there is different humidity and temperature requirements, as well as, most importantly, you would want bees in that space. So everything that we've grown there has been hand pollinated with a toothbrush. And if you were growing those as your main crop, you would have bees in your facility, which may sound scary, but it's they don't sting you for the most part, or you're usually wearing long sleeves and whatnot, and a coat and stuff in the farm. So there's nothing really to be concerned about, but it is interesting playing around with those things and seeing where the space could go. The most difficult thing to grow in a vertical farm, and I don't really see it ever really getting there, is root vegetables, your potatoes, your beets, and that kind of stuff, just because most times you're not using soil in a vertical farm, and the media that you use is in a confined space. So for your main crop to be growing inside the media and expanding that wouldn't be very practical. But people test out all sorts of things, and it is definitely possible, and we'll see where it goes. I think that's all.
Amazing. Thank you, Derek. And I don't know, my hunch would be never say never on some of these things because of the way that people are getting creative on how to grow food. So who knows what we'll see being grown indoors in the decades to come. But thank you for that. All right, Pete, over to you, and to tell us more about aquaponics, please. Just need to unmute yourself first, I believe.
Hello, everybody. I guess I don't know why everybody's so excited. Well, the reason I'm so excited is really because of I'm really not sure what chemicals are doing to our food, and I'm sorry that we have to use those uh, things. Most farmers have to use them. ClearWater seems to be doing a very good job up there, but I'm not too sure how we can viably do that kind of stuff, because it is hard to control bugs and cold and weather. So we've taken it upon ourselves to actually grow 12 months a year, and we are only doing leafy greens right now, but we've utilized an old school building, and I've actually designed the system. I did go down to, my wife and I went down to Denver to actually look at an aquaponic system. There was no courses or anything. Well, actually, if I think this year is the first time, if you Google aquaponics, that they actually put the spelling up there, because nobody's known for I guess, I don't know, at least 5 years that there's been nobody even really knows what aquaponics is, and it's probably been around, well, it has been around for thousands of years. So what we're trying to, oh, I can't move this. One thing that I do want to say is that in our system here, we say it's a closed loop system, but we do have inputs of food and whatnot. And I do want to emphasize that a smaller system is much more user friendly, and you can grow the food for your fish within a smaller system. And okay, so here's my so right now we do grow leafy greens, because we're growing in what is called a coupled system. So the water from the fish and the water from the plants ends up in the same sump. I did have Lethbridge College. I used them for 5 days for some information, and we did a Zoom call of the first system I had set up. And because the bead filter that we use is for aquaculture, it seemed the fish person on the Zoom call from Lethbridge College kind of asked me why I had a UV light beside it. Well, that's because it's in aquaculture. They need the UV light to kill all the bacteria, but in our system, we convert ammonia to nitrogen, which is actually done naturally in the ground. Everybody always looks at I'm kind of going off topic, but when a dog pees in your grass, everybody always looks at the little yellow spot. But if you actually look at the spot, you'll notice that the grass around the pee spot of the dog is always lush and green and way better than the rest of your grass. Well, that's because the bacteria that grows naturally in the ground, that we grow naturally in our bead filter, has changed that ammonia, which is the yellow spot, to nitrogen, which is the green ring around it. So everybody always looks at the brown spot, but it's the green spot that's really where the magic happens. Else I want to say. Yes. So in this picture, you can see the the fish is the start of it, but really you can actually create nitrogen as long as you have ammonia. So you could put ammonia in water and actually grow the bacteria in that filter, I believe. I just don't know. Just doesn't, why would you have ammonia around when we can have fish around? I really wanted to have tilapia or a fish that we could eat. But in order to make this viable, I think it really has to really the plants have to make the profit, and the actual I'm not even sure if we're really even rolling a profit yet, but we are, because we are going to, because I have three beds. We've just brought one bed online. We've had two beds online that are 68 feet long by 8 feet wide, and we've just bringing on another one. But I have three other beds here waiting for more sales, basically. I bought all of my fish at the same time, so I didn't have to introduce any new fish, because that's what brings bacteria into the system. The one thing that I do want to say about being, when I said coupled and decoupled, so we're a coupled system. So I wanted to get back to the point that the actual bacteria actually kills all the bad bacteria in the system. So there's a person that has been online. He says he's drank the water every day out of his system for 6 years. Now, I would never do that, but I think one glass of water probably wouldn't hurt. The other thing I do, we use 95% less water. I'm not really sure what the usage is of hydroponics, but hydroponics is, I know that after 6 or 8 months, depending on what they're growing, they have to dump off their whole system and refill the system with water. And as I think that water is probably one of the most important things on this earth, I think that's something that we really need to take care of. And what have I got here? So that is one other thing I did want to say about in organic food. You can go on the Canada website, and you'll see that there's 365 items that's allowed in organic food. In our system, you just really, anything you put in has to be good for the fish, so you can't use anything like that. So not sure if there's any more I need to, as far as the carbon use and whatnot. We use boilers. I have 150,000 BTU boilers, and I'm just looking at incorporating the exhaust to put in the carbon dioxide into the grow room in the wintertime. And I did hear that there is a person, somebody is growing and using carbon dioxide, and because they're using it, they're being charged a carbon tax for it. So what I'm trying to get to is, so no carbon tax. Actually, maybe they should be giving us a carbon bank, not a carbon tax. They should give us our money back. So most of our beds are all of our beds right now are deep water culture, but we pull all the solids off and we put them in a dewatering bag. So we do at this point, we haven't really done it, but I'm looking to sell fertilizer. But the real intent is to pull those solids off and put them into a tank and actually process them to actually water a greenhouse underground. And then that you'll really see the I think you'll really see the potential of what we can grow here. The other thing that we have incorporated is a little different, is we do have to save heating and whatnot, we have incorporated a little bit of geothermal. If you actually Google citrus in the snow, you'll see a gentleman there that has been growing oranges in Alliance, Nebraska for like 30 years. So in the video, you'll see the USDA and some university professors asking him questions, and are quite amazed at him growing oranges. So if you think about that, he sank 8 6-inch big old pipes 8 feet into the ground, and he runs it around his property 225 feet, and that allows him in a greenhouse in Alliance, Nebraska, which is 2 latitudes south of where we are. So it is still very cold. He just throws a furnace fan. He has a furnace fan that he throws on a clump of those big O's. And when the temperature in his greenhouse reaches 50 degrees, that fan comes on. So his ground temperature, I think, is like 56 degrees down where he is. And it's fairly constantly consistent around the world, even though it's always above freezing. So we have I've incorporated the same thing here. So I've created an HRV room, which I just blow the air from those pipes into that room, so I don't suck in like this time of year where you'd be sucking in -21 last night, where in my room it's always that fan isn't shut off in 2 years, and it's always been above freezing, no matter how cold it is at night. Now it gets right down to 32. But
sorry, I'm just you're getting into an area where we're getting a lot of questions right now. So
sorry, I probably shouldn't have.
No, it's fantastic. No, it's great. It's sparking some discussion in the question side of things. So
yeah,
I think I'm just also sensitive to time because I'm seeing we've got about 15 minutes left. So we are going to move into the Q&A side of things. And I think where you're leading us is really interesting, because what we've heard about is growing greens in the Canadian winter. And it's clear because of taste, because of freshness, that there is a need and a desire for it. But I heard a common theme of water, like preserving water, respecting water, like replenishing water, using less water. But then where you started to take us was into the area of the energy, because like indoor growing requires some sort of heat source, some sort of electrical source. So I'm kind of curious to hear from like Larissa, Derrik, Michael, like how are you approaching heating and energy as well? Like, because managing those two things, especially as we see like rising fuel costs and heating costs, that's going to affect cost of production, and the affordability of the food as well. So I don't know if anybody wants to jump in on that. Yeah, sorry, Pete, go.
So Dave, I really think, so when I put the greenhouse out there, I really do believe that the heat from the building here is going to ensure that will never freeze out there. And there is lots of, I've actually researched a few greenhouses and whatnot, and I really think that I can make I'm talking about a greenhouse, and maybe even like I have 5.5 acres here. I think some underground tubes could even keep ponds unfrozen all year. So I don't know. ClearWater Farms is I think is where I want to get to. Is I really think that we need to bring food to people at a price the same as or cheaper of what we're buying now. I think it's possible. It's just not possible under our circumstances.
Definitely agree. So Michael, let's hear from you on kind of the challenge between heating and price point in winter. You're muted right now.
So it is one we're still struggling to find that balance, just being able to keep the temperature in the greenhouse low enough so our heating costs are manageable, while also getting that growth so you're able to produce on scale. Like I would say our production's a little bit down this year. We kept the greenhouses much warmer last year. We were also heating them with propane last year, and we've switched over to natural gas this year. We do have a project in the works, which is a biodigester, which will be able to turn green waste into fuel. And we're hoping that's going to be up and running by sort of midsummer and into the fall. And so we're going to be experimenting with that into the growing season for 2023 through that winter there. And again, I think it just comes down to crop selection. Like there's a lot of cold hardy greens which do very well with low heat, and just choosing not to grow some of those greens that don't do quite as well in the colder winter months. So finding that balance, which we're still struggling to do, but each year we're learning a little bit more.
Thanks, Michael. Yeah, so what I'm hearing are forays into geothermal biodigesters, passive and active solar. Derrik, Larissa, any thoughts on that?
Well, we use a heat pump to heat.
Okay.
So we're not using natural gas or propane, so there's no emissions. But one downfall is if the temperature drops below -25, which it has this winter, our heat just stops. It just shuts off. It's too cold for it to run. And then that gave us more other problems, because then we would have slower germination rate, and we'd have to bring in space heaters, right, to get the heat back up. So that's still a challenge for us to balance out for next winter.
I would say we're in a bit of an opposite situation, whereas heat is definitely not our issue. Heating is not our issue. It's overheating that's our issue, because our lights, I mean, we do have a lot of lights, and that's unfortunately the downside of vertical farming. Those lights produce heat. So we run them at an opposite day cycle. So they turn on at 6 p.m. at night and turn off at noon. So right now, our lights our plants are actually sleeping. And the reason for that is to reduce the heat in the farm, because we want the lights to be on when it's coldest outside, whether that be in the winter or in the summer. But for example, throughout this winter, we do have a heater in the space that's probably turned on twice. If it gets to -20 or below, it might turn on. But other than that, our lights are producing enough heat to offset that and keep it at the temperature that we need. It's really in the summer that it becomes more of an issue, because we are relying on air conditioning quite a bit. But I mean, we do what we can with running that reverse cycle.
Okay, thanks, Derrik. I have an interesting question, and this is actually coming from myself for the 3 indoor farmers, and that is, how has I guess your region, your municipality, and everything responded? Like, are you zoned agricultural? Have you faced barriers towards being recognized as a farm because you're growing in, like in an unusual setting, whether it's an old school, so how would you describe it's like your big steel shed, like garage structure, right? Derrik, I haven't seen yours yet, but I just know that these are not traditional, like what traditionally zoned agricultural, right?
I can take that first if you want. So we're not actually zoned as a farm or an agricultural facility. We are zoned as a food processing facility, and that's just the way that it had to be. I mean, we're in a commercial area in Ottawa. It wasn't able to be rezoned as an agricultural space. It was difficult to start, because most municipalities haven't seen this before, and they kind of need to take a seat back and figure out how they want to approach this. But from the beginning, we worked with the city, and we were able to come to a resolution on how to get everything framed properly and operate.
Nice. Okay, thanks, Derrik. Larissa or Pete, anything? Yeah,
I can jump in. So we are a small scale indoor farm. We do have limitations on our property, because our property many moons ago was actually a cattle farm, and then it backs onto conservation, and there's been some limitations on the land because of the conservation. That's why we really had to look at something that we could do year round indoors. And we were lucky that there was already a 1,200 square foot Quonset on the property. So that's what we started off with. But we have been working with the town over the last years to see if we can utilize any of the outdoor space, but we're not there yet.
Thanks, Larissa. How about you, Pete? How was it getting retrofitting, upfitting an old school, I hear? Yeah.
So Dave, it's terrible, to be quite honest with you. So the very first course that I took here, I took one at Noah Fisheries up. It was, I think they're in Whitby. I don't even know if they're still there, but that's the Omafra fish person was there at the time. So this is 5 years ago. He told me the very first thing I should do is try to get this zoned agricultural. Well, the problem is, and I get it from the economic development, I get it from community futures, they all want to help me, but the only way they can help me is if the provincial policy statement changes. As 5 years ago, I went and saw Mr. Leo, which was our agricultural minister at the time. Of course, he didn't know what aquaponics was. I told him who had the aquaponics file in his ministry, and I have contacted the mayor here a couple times, and believe it, he's on the Otonabee Region Conservation Authority, and he's never really had any interest to get back to me. So the real issue, the people from economic development and futures, is the real issue is there is no funding, there is no, I even took courses at Omafra. If you are growing in water, you will not be funded. So Michael's doing a good thing up there at ClearWater. I'm actually thinking seriously of changing this into a nonprofit, to be quite honest with you. There's a few different ways to do it, but I really think, to be quite honest with you, I really want I know it's probably not in your best interest, Dave, but I really want the local people to be buying off of me, and that is going to stop all of the gas and whatnot, and just do it again. I really think that, to be quite honest with you, I think we should just share the profit with all the people that eat it, to be quite honest with you. So I don't, there's just no laws. So right now I got a call. I got a call from our township office, and he told me of somebody in Port Hope, a counselor in Port Hope that was buying a school, and he was partnering with a new company of university students. Well, what they wanted to do, I actually contacted him, and he wanted to use my system and whatnot. But so what they were doing is they were trying to I guess they were trying to do something with the seeds. And the reason they were trying to do that with the seeds is because they would get funding from the government, because it's some kind of new technology. Where we're farming, all I'm doing is really growing in water here. It's not new technology, but how I'm doing it is probably how we are all doing it, actually, is hands and head and shoulders above normal farmers, right? And there is a potential for like, I have 5.5 acres. I really believe there's potential to water underground out there, to plant corn and to plant all that stuff that you could really. But at any rate,
sorry, Pete. We are up at the end of our time, and one of the things I always do is try to make sure I respect the times that we said. So we'd be ending at 1. We've got 1 minute left, unfortunately. So what I am going to say is that, like, I really loved and appreciated hearing the different ways that folks are trying and actually succeeding in growing greens in urban, peri-urban, and rural areas. I think it's the future of food does require a lot of creativity. So I'm seeing a lot of emojis pop up as applauds and thumbs up and thank yous. I will say that one of the things that I found myself being invited to, I think, well, because of Graze Gather, is to be on the advisory committee for the Barrett Center of Innovation and Sustainable Urban Agriculture that Durham College just announced last year. And one of the things we had our first steering committee meeting a couple weeks ago, and what they want to take on is reducing all of the policy and regulatory barriers that face urban agriculture. And so that idea of zoning, of getting the bureaucrats, the politicians, understanding what it is and supporting it, because everything that all of you shared around it being better for the environment, tastier, fresher, those are all like really solid and valid points around how do we feed a growing population. So thank you for being pioneers in the space, and and making that dedication to respecting water, air, soil in different ways. So, and thank you for taking the time today to join us and to share those thoughts. So thank you. Looking forward to working more with all of you in the months to come. And thank you to everybody that attended and paid attention over your lunch hour. Appreciate it. Thank you. Next Lunch and Learn will be the last Tuesday in March. Don't have the specific topic yet, everybody. So we're looking at Tuesday, March 29th. We are looking at something around the kind of the spring holidays, and whether that's ham and lamb, or something like that. What can we be doing to talk about those ingredients come spring holidays? So thank you, everyone, and take care, and I'll see you around. Bye now.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.